There's obviously going to be scenarios where, that's not possible for whatever reason because parkour is very diverse, but the alternating footwork is going to be superior.
Hey, Coach Renee here, Coach Tom, and today we are going to be talking about a massive hole that exists in, I would say, most people's parkour game. I see it all over the place. We're talking about ambidexterity with top outs. So maybe you could start by telling everybody where we see this sort of thing happen.
Yeah, so the most common experience of a lack of understanding of the ambidextrous climb up, or top out in particular, is in the climb up. So if I were to do a climb up here on this wall, I'll have one foot set up high, and then I pull up into my catch position. And if I have the ability to do a top out on my right foot, then that's going to be the ideal one. But if I only can do it on my left foot, I have to take that extra second to switch my feet over to do my top out there. So that's the main spot that I see it. Where else do you see it?
So along the same lines, when someone's doing a climb up, but if you happen to do a wall run, cat back, any sort of movement that actually puts you in maybe your offside for a climb up. So most people tend to have, I'm sure you watching this, you probably have a preferred foot setup to initiate your climb up. And if you're not in that preferred foot setup, you'll kind of go through the motions, and then you'll hit that catch portion of the climb up and realize, or maybe not realize. I don't actually think people realize.
Yeah.
But you'll realize, not realize that you're not in the ideal setup to do top out, and so there'll be kind of some fumbling or maybe an extra step put in there. But even in like wall pops or basically absent of a climb up, someone will pop up again on the wrong foot, maybe in a speed course or something. They'll take off. I keep saying wrong foot, but it's again not their preferred side. So for me, if I'm doing a wall pop or a wall run, I like to put that right foot on the wall. And what I'll find is people, when they're doing a speed course or something, if it's very clear that it's their offside for a wall run, they'll end up in this position, and then they'll use that same foot that they put on the wall, and instead of switching, they'll use that same foot and kick it back for their top out, costing them valuable milliseconds.
Valuable milliseconds, for sure. I found out it's actually not centiseconds, it's nanoseconds. Thank you for the comment here. That helped us out there. So I want to kind of illustrate this a little bit here. So if I'm running up to this wall, I take a step with my left foot on the wall to drive up, and then I want to use my left foot again. That's going to be a little bit slower than if I were to be able to alternate my footwork. So alternating footwork is really key for ascending movement. There's obviously going to be scenarios where that's not possible for whatever reason because parkour is very diverse, but the alternating footwork is going to be superior in terms of speed because I can take that step way, way faster.
So if you want that kind of flow, that kind of speed with some of your wall movement or just getting on top of walls, we need to find a path to being ambidextrous in that top out.
Yeah.
So,
but that also means that we need to be ambidextrous in our set foot.
True.
Right. So it's important to have capability on both sides. And I'm actually quite a big proponent personally of developing a good side because if you have a deep understanding of of one side, it's really easy to translate that over to the other side. But the problem is you have to do that translation, otherwise it just will never happen.
Yeah. So I think as we get into now, possibly to find out how this is happening and how to fix it, I think one thing we can point out right away is that if you're a beginner or if you're still learning how to do climb ups or still learning how to do wall pops, this is not something that you really need to focus on right away through, I would say, I don't know if you
No,
agree
I
with
agree.
that. As we're talking about, kind of, first specializing in that one side so that you have that smooth technique down, and then you can start to play around with ambidexterity. You're going to be lengthening your learning curve if you're trying to learn both sides at the same time.
Yeah, especially because these are complex movements that we're dealing with. If as you said, if you're trying to stay balanced the whole way through your learning process, you're gonna make it take much longer, and you're not gonna have as deep of an understanding of the skill because you haven't spent the time developing the technique. So it is really important. I mean, I actually encourage beginners to try both sides to see which one feels like the more natural side. And then once okay, this is feeling really good off my left foot, I'm gonna sort of dive deep into the left foot and see if I can then translate it over at a later time to my right foot to make sure I'm balanced.
It's a good point. I think with one of our previous videos about shoulder rolls, some people were pausing the video to determine like what they're doing on what side. So you could be watching this right now and not really have a great idea in your head about your dominant side. Sometimes it just happens. I know it took me to the point where when I got more into coaching, just bigger groups of people, to actually figure out, oh, I do it on this side. But sometimes I had this weird thing, I'm going to try not to go off on a long tangent here, but I had this weird thing where I prefer to climb up from this setup. If I'm going to do a cat back, I prefer this setup. And what would happen is, because I drilled both of those so much, as soon as I hit a cat leap, so as soon as I land in position, I would drop immediately to whatever side without thinking about it.
Yeah.
So I was not aware for the longest time that I was doing it on two separate sides. And maybe that helped with some of the ambidexterity too with top outs, because I had that alternating set position for very similar moves, but different ones. And again, when it would be a reaction right away. I would go to either side there.
Yeah, no, it's funny because a lot of skill that we've developed over the course of our time, sometimes it's totally unconscious, right? Like we're just reacting in the moment. But it's important to be able to identify the holes in your game, right? So you need to eventually start bringing things into conscious understanding of, okay, like there's something that I can improve here. What is it? You take video, you look at it, you're like, oh, it looks like I'm doing my climb ups on my left foot and then I got to top out on my left foot again. That's not going to work. I need to see if I can, combine these elements together with alternating footwork, which is going to ultimately make me a better ascending practitioner.
All right, so if I can now, we can start to move into the why. And one of the reasons I actually wanted to point out, because this is definitely something that affects me, is actually mobility. And it could be mobility, I feel like, in two forms. So we start with ankle mobility, which for me, I'm quite mobile on both sides. So I can get my knee past my toe quite a bit. But my hips are a bit messed up. And I'm going to try to do a little demonstration here. I've just been sitting on my butt for a bit here. So I do have a dominant side for my top out. So if I'm just doing cold top out, what I prefer is this to get up.
Right.
I can do the other side, but that was a lot more comfortable, and I actually felt a little bit of a pull in my back.
Yeah.
Really showing my age here. But, and so I'll find, and I've actually confided in with you this before, when we're teaching the kids in the morning or something, and it's an early Sunday or something, and I'm getting up and we have to set up or have to get on top of walls, and I almost lose the ability to do a top out. So that's how much warm up sometimes I require to actually get into that. It's not really a pike, but similar to pike position to get into that top out. So mobility is one where, for me, again, I have a little bit more, I don't know if it's right or left or what's happening here, but I definitely feel a bit more of a tug or restriction when I try one side or the other. So that's what stands out to me is mobility being a key factor for that.
But the interesting thing here is that you have developed competency, at least a base level of competency on both sides, right? Like you're able to do it on both sides. So when you're presented with the challenge of, your approach is setting you up for, one side for your step or for your pop on the wall, well, you're at least able to complete the skill using your other side for your top out. So that's what's really key here, is that you want to develop at least base level competency on both sides, so that when you're presented with the scenario that comes up, that the only way to complete the line is by doing this in this particular way, or at least the only way to do it well is by doing it in this way, then you actually have that competency. Yeah. So
is there another reason that you think, other than, I guess, practice being the other one, just simply practicing both sides, but I don't know if there's anything else that sticks out to you as being a reason why
people are preferring that side? Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, I don't really know the why. My assumption would be that it's their preferred foot for jumping, and so they're using it kind of repeatedly for for wall contacts. So prefer foot for wall contacts. So maybe they want to use that more. But yeah, I think really it comes down to practice, and maybe the reason they're practicing it that way is because of things like mobility or other like biomechanical factors that just might be present in some people.
Okay, so if we can wrap this up then and give maybe some of our viewers some advice as to how to develop that other side. So we already just kind of talked about, okay, practice it, obviously, right? Yeah. But if someone's really having trouble, what are some of the key pointers you give for just teaching a top out in general? Because essentially sometimes when we switch sides, we have to relearn the skill. So maybe we're not going to do like a full-on top out tutorial, but maybe if we can start to maybe share some of the things that you find helpful for learning a top out.
So the main drill that I would suggest is starting in your front support position and just practicing kicking with your with the other foot, the one that you wouldn't normally kick backwards with. So I'll just kind of jump over here.
Little musical chairs on the edge of the
edge of buildings, So my preferred top outside is actually this one. So that's my left foot jumping on the wall and my right foot kicking. However, I don't do my climb ups that way. My climb ups are actually done this way. So I actually have I'm quite competent on both sides. But the drill that I would practice here is the jumping off of my non-dominant side and then just that drive of the heel backwards to help elevate my hips. I'm not even jumping very high. I would add in more jump so that I can get higher hip position. So just kind of getting used to doing this pattern and then seeing if I can add more. That's going to be really helpful for kind of developing that motor pathway. And then the other big one is just developing some strength here. And because we've had this discussion before, a top out is much easier if you have the strength or the ability to pull your hips up without any jumping or kicking, right? So we have the technique of jumping and kicking to maximize our ability to pull our hips up. But if you can pull your hips up without jumping or kicking, you're really setting yourself up really well for a top out. So the drill or the strength exercise here would be front support hip lifts. So if you can pull your hips really high, that's going to be a really helpful ability that you'll be generating. If that's really difficult for you, if you did it on a slant, it'll be a little bit easier. You can kind of walk your feet up. So same concept, but walking up. And then even scaled down here is maybe starting from the top. So you start from the top and then see if you can lower down slowly is another method of developing this strength.
I also want to recommend just with that drill too, maybe start in socks, particularly if it's a slippery wall like this. The more friction you have on the wall, the harder it's going to be to like allow your feet to drag up and down. The other point I wanted to make though, and I don't know if everyone could see there too, is how much you actually have to lean forward over like your wrists. So you could even get into some wrist stretches as a good point. Some people might not realize how, I talked about mobility earlier, but some people might not realize how locked they are there. And just like as if you're doing a Kong over a structure with the top out, your hips and the rest of you is going to get up so much easier if a big chunk of your weight is already over the wall. So we talk about getting your shoulders and your chest forward, which again, from the angle when you're turned that way, we can't see as much, but that's really what's happening is you need so much lean there. And the last thing I think I would say for mobility is, again, if you're someone like me who feels a little bit of a difference side to side with hips, is get into, get onto the side of a building and get into a nice like pigeon stretch here. So really try to open up, create some space on that off side, or do both sides if you can't determine which side is weird. It doesn't matter, both are good. Hit that for maybe a minute or so as part of your warm-up before you start doing some of these drills.
Yeah, and it doesn't quite work as well unless you're on the side of a building.
Good point. All right, everybody, that is it for us today. I hope you get into some practice on both sides for your top out so that you can have that excellent speed and flow that we saw Coach Tom doing today. And drop us a comment if you have any skills or anything that you want to see us cover in future videos. Remember to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Someone has called the authorities on us, so I think we should
Probably because we're on the top of a building.
Probably. All right, see you guys next time. Peace.